Welcome back to In the Box, a Fifth Line 5R show presented by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We're a Florida Panthers show where we talk everything Florida's Panthers hockey. I'm Alex Baumgartner, joined with Jamie Goldman and David Dwork, and we're here to talk about the first round series between the Washington Capitals and the Florida Panthers. First of all, thank you both for joining us today on the show.
Happy to.
Yeah, of course.
So right away, I just want to jump into it. The Panthers obviously finished with the President's Trophy, first time in franchise history. If you don't know, the President's Trophy means you are the best team in the NHL. You also have home ice for the entirety of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And as guys that have watched this team for a very long time, we clearly haven't seen a season anywhere close to this.
No doubt. I feel like something clicked in my head about a month ago, and I kind of started realizing that it's not just a ridiculous season in terms of, recent Panthers history. This is probably going to end up being the best Panthers season ever for a long time. Even if they're as good as we think they probably will continue to be for the next few years, because the roster is intact and sustainable and all that. This season has been nuts. I mean, there's only a handful of teams that have won as many games as they won this year. This is historic. It's beyond anything we've seen with this franchise for the last, almost 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
you haven't seen anything like it in the Florida Panthers history, especially like with the wins that they've come through, the comeback wins and all the goals that they've scored. They've been offensive powerhouse juggernaut team this season, and Florida Panthers and even the NHL, like you haven't seen anything like it in a number of years.
I mean, offensively, it's just one of the greatest seasons since the high-scoring 90s. So for a team to put up 4.11 goals a game, it's honestly ridiculous. And with that, we haven't won a first-round series since 1996. Now, me and Jamie were not alive in 1996. So we can't talk about that run that they made to the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, this is a different Panthers team. Offensively, they're there. Defensively, it seems like they're coming into their own. Aaron Ekblad, we don't know exactly when he's back, but we're hoping he's back for round one. The goaltending situation is probably the biggest thing that we have for the postseason for the Panthers. Now, Sergei Bobrovsky should be the guy to go game one. He's kind of solidified that, but I think the leash is a little bit shorter than some other goalies in the NHL. But the Washington Capitals, which is the first round matchup, has a more interesting goalie situation, in my opinion, because if you look at the stats, Vita Vanacek and Ilya Samsonov have pretty much split the season series or the regular season exactly the same. Both had 39 games. One started a little bit more than the other. But David, I know you're the goalie guy. You play goalie. Looking at the Capitals goaltending situation compared to the Panthers, can you just, talk about what you think in terms of goalie versus goalie? Who comes out on top with a little bit of a higher edge?
I think there's no question that the edge goes to the Panthers, even with, the discussions and the issues or whatever you want to say about what we've dealt with Sergei Bobrovsky over the last 3 years. And, the back and forth that we thought it was going to be this year with Spencer Knight that it really didn't turn out to be. I think the Panthers situation is head and shoulders above the Caps, just because the Caps goaltending situation has been kind of like the Achilles heel of that team this season. I mean, yes, they both have started a similar amount, but they're both really different in what they bring to the table. I actually had a really good chat with Tariq El-Bashar, who covers the Capitals for The Athletic earlier today, specifically about the goaltenders. Basically, you've got a guy in Vanacek who's a bit more stable, a bit more solid, not quite as athletic, not making the spectacular saves, but just overall a steady goalie. And then you've got Samsonov, who's extremely athletic, who will make these ridiculous stretching saves and go across the crease, but gives up the weak ones, the dribblers, the ones that, leak through you much more often. So it's kind of, swing big or, just take it easy. My guess is they're going to end up going with Vanacek just because he's the more stable goaltender. I think they maybe leaned on him a little bit more down the stretch. But I mean, either way, you've got a team whose issue is goaltending going against a team whose strong suit is scoring. And that just doesn't add up very well for the Capitals at all.
And David, just quickly, you've been covering this team for a very long time, longer than me and Jamie have been covering this team. Offensively, in hockey history, have you seen a team even close, maybe since the 596 Penguins that could score at will like this Panthers team. And come playoff time, do you think they can keep the consistency of 4 goals a game? Because we know playoff hockey, it's a lot more physical. It's a lot tighter games. And like, what do you think offensively for this Panthers team?
Historically speaking, I can't really remember, at least in recent memory, a team that was able to do it as consistently as the Panthers. I mean, the 90s it was a different game. Like the goals were up a little bit, and then they went down as we got deeper into the 90s, and they did the crease rules. They tried to change the game because the scoring was a little too high. It's crazy. And I think that kind of adds to what makes it so exciting this season, is that we haven't really seen anything like it in so long. And I mean, for younger fans, like you guys, because you talk about how you guys weren't even alive in 96. I was 13 in 96, not that old, but old enough to have a pretty vivid memory of, the seasons, the playoff run, the rat songs on the radio, the rat birthday cakes at Publix that they were selling. It was nuts. So hopefully, it gets back to that kind of a vibe down here. But yeah, overall, it's going to be interesting. When, a big topic, right, has been, can the Panthers sustain this high goal scoring that they've done when things tighten up in the playoffs? Well, maybe not, but it's not like things are just going to tighten up for one team. Like when you talk about things getting physical, you talk about penalty minutes going up, you talk about extended shifts, all that's going to be on both ends. So it's not like the Panthers are going to be sacrificing opportunity that the other team is going to be picking up on. Things tighten up both ways. The Panthers should still have an offensive edge over whoever they play. So while they might not score as many goals a game, I would think that, if they continue to play their game, they'll be able to at least continue to have the edge above how much they're giving up. And that should, hopefully transform, compute, whatever, into the Panthers succeeding in the postseason the way they did in the regular season.
So the Washington Capitals obviously won the Stanley Cup in 2018. That was Alexander Ovechkin's first Stanley Cup. 2019, 2020, and 2021, they lost in the first round. So that's 3 straight years that they weren't able to advance after that. The Florida Panthers, as we've talked about, have not advanced since 1996. And quickly, I just want to say thank you for the $10 donation to Adam. What is the status of Ekblad? Will he be ready for game 1? What is the biggest key for the series with the Caps? Just quickly, David, I know you're on this case. You're always in the press conferences. Do you know any update with Ekblad?
I mean, what they're saying on the record in terms of what Bruno, I mean, look, it's kind of progressed with Bruno. It went from first, we hope to have him back in the first couple of rounds. And then it became, we'll hope to have him back sometime in round 1. And then today the question was, will he be ready for game 1? And Bruno wouldn't come out and say it. They're still going to err on the side of caution. They're not going to give anything away. But I mean, just looking at the evidence on the ice, Ekblad was a full participant paired up with Mackenzie Weegar. Like, they're not going to be preparing for that, in my opinion, if he's not being planned as the guy to be penciled in for game 1. I think he's been trending in that direction. From what speaking to sources over the last couple of months, I haven't heard anything in terms of off schedule, no setbacks. It's been a very, deliberate but successful recovery to this point. And I'd be surprised if he wasn't out there in game 1. They haven't come out and said it yet. And I imagine we probably won't get anything concrete until at least after the morning skate on Tuesday. But again, barring any setbacks, I'd be really surprised if Ekblad isn't out there for game 1.
And when the injury happened, they reported 5 to 7 weeks. The timetable when that injury happened to the first round is 7 weeks. So we're entering around the 7th week. Panthers don't play tomorrow, but they play the Tuesday, as David just said. So we can't say anything until Bruno kind of makes a decision. But, we're very hopeful that he will be there for round 1, game 1, hopefully. But Jamie, as I just said, Capitals 2018 Stanley Cup champions haven't had playoff success in terms of advancing out of the first round. Now, the Panthers, very inexperienced for majority of this core group, Huberdeau, Barkov, Ekblad, Weegar, they haven't advanced out of the first round. And then you got guys like Sam Reinhart, who hasn't stepped foot in an NHL playoff game, but just put up 82 points in a season in less than 82 games after coming from Buffalo, where he never made the playoffs in a single year. This is a different Panthers team, even from last year, where they were probably one of the better teams that didn't advance out of the first round. They were probably the toughest matchup for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And, you win the President's Trophy this year. You got guys like Anton Lundell, Sam Reinhart, Ben Sherrod, Claude Giroux. What do you think is your expectation for this first-round matchup, looking at a team with Alex Ovechkin, Nicholas Backstrom, Tom Wilson, etc.?
It's very interesting because, like you mentioned, the Capitals a couple seasons ago, they won the Stanley Cup, and like Ovechkin, Backstrom, Oshie, they have that core that's been there for a couple seasons. Orlov on the D side. They've been in the playoffs for years to come, and they're used to it. They're an experienced team, and that is an advantage come playoff time. But on the other side of things, you mentioned last couple seasons, they've been first round knockouts. So it seems like the wheels are starting to fall off a little bit. They haven't really transitioned their roster too much. It's pretty much similar core than it was in 2018. And then on the other side, you look at the Florida Panthers, and yes, they might not have the experience as the Capitals, but what they lack in experience, I think they make up for with hunger. Because this is a team, like you mentioned, with guys like Weegar and Ekblad and Barkov and Huberdeau, who have been together for a number of years, but they haven't really seen the success that they would like to. And finally, they're starting to see some success. And finally, they put themselves in a position to succeed come playoff time. And I think they're going to come out and do everything they can to prove themselves, because you look around the league and, like, yes, the Panthers had a great regular season. Yes, the Panthers gave the Lightning a run for their money last season. But in all reality, the Panthers haven't done anything in the playoffs. If I'm a casual NHL fan or another city's fan at the Panthers, and I'm saying I'm not worried about them. They haven't done anything. So I think the players in the Panthers locker room acknowledge that, and they should come out and use it as fuel and motivation to come out and prove themselves to the rest of the league.
I mean, obviously the Florida Panthers offensively just unbelievable, scoring at will. And they've been kind of making an impact around the league in terms of noise. They've been generating more noise, more than we've ever seen. FLA Live Arena. David, you've been at pretty much every game this season. It's different. It's not, what it was 5-6 years ago. It's packed. It's loud. It's turning into what we thought it would be when the Panthers put out a really good product on the ice. Now, come playoff time, last year, I was at game 1. That place was loud. Game 1 this year.
And that was with limited capacity, too.
Limited capacity, because they went about 11, 12,000, then they went 15,000. It's full capacity this season. And I haven't been in Florida in about 6 months, but you two been living in South Florida. We see it at the beach. I know, David, I saw your Twitter today at the beach. They had the Panthers playoff advertisements in I think it was Fort Lauderdale Beach or something.
Yep.
At the arena, it's just beautiful. I-95 everywhere. We got billboards in the city. I don't remember this. The Heat are playing their series right now, but the Panthers are generating so much noise. I personally believe that I don't think I've seen this fan base so energetic since I've been alive. David, can you add to that, just the fan base and the noise around South Florida for this playoff run?
Well, I mean, you just talked about how, or excuse me, Jamie just talked about the hunger being the motivation for the team, right? How do you think the fans feel? Like, a lot of them have been around longer than the players who've been on the team, right? You got the diehard Panther fans have been around, as long as I've been watching this team, 20 odd years, whatever it's been since 1993. They're ready. You take that crazy for success Panthers fan base, like the base unit, like the hardcores, the one that's been there forever. You add to that your typical South Florida sports fans who they see a team winning, they see something popular getting attention. Ooh, let me just flock over to that because it's popular and it's cool, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow. And that's South Florida. The Panthers, they put themselves in that position because not only are they good, not only are they in the playoffs, but they won the whole damn league. And they did it by scoring more goals than anybody's seen scored in almost 30 years. So they're checking off all the boxes for the South Florida sports fan to say, ooh, maybe I should go there. Maybe that's a cool place to be. The Heat game has been the coolest place to be for a while now. Pat Riley made it that, with Wade and Shaq at first, and then the big three. And I mean, the Heat have been awesome. It's been a great destination for South Florida sports fans to go to. The Panthers, if they continue to win and they bring this exciting hockey and then they do it in the playoffs, it's going to be nuts. I mean, you've seen what's gone on at the arena this year. They're singing along with like Sweet Caroline and all the small things. They're doing the wave. It's fun. They're really into it. And then you add to that what it's going to be like when the playoffs start, when that building is packed to the rooftop. I mean, that building seats like 20,000. It's a huge building.
One of the top 4 or 5 in the NHL.
Yeah, when they fill it up, it gets so loud. Like, I still think back to that first playoff series back in 2012 when they hadn't made the playoffs in over a decade. That game 7 against Marcel Gotch, And that team, look, comparing that team's roster to this team's roster, you can't even compare it. It's like a junior team against what the Panthers have now. But as loud as the building got that year, I'm thinking they're going to top that this year. It could be pretty special.
And David, you just mentioned Pat Riley and the success he brought to the South Florida market. We have Bill Zito for 2 seasons. He brought in Anthony Duclair, over 30 goals, career high. We have Sam Reinhart, who just hit 82 points in a season and under 82 games, over a point per game after coming from Buffalo, where he had no playoff sniffs. We have Sam Bennett, who was a playoff performer, playoff juggernaut almost in Calgary, comes to Florida, and he's kind of solidified his role in South Florida as that number 2 center. We got rookie Anton Lundell. Ryan Lomberg, who was playing ECHL, AHL for a lot of his career. Now he's a fan favorite. I mean, the Lamborghini, we see it in South Florida. When he gets in the fight, he flips the flow. The fans are going crazy. Not to mention the franchise players in Barkov, Huberdeau, the acquisition of Claude Giroux. I remember a couple years ago, and this is no disrespect to what the previous regime did, but when they brought in guys, it was Halla, it was Hudler. We got Claude Giroux, who could potentially be a Hockey Hall of Famer. We have Ben Sherratt, who is undoubtedly one of the 2-3 best defensemen available in the market. And then a 7th round or a 4th round acquisition for Robert Haig. They're adding pieces. They got depth. Robert Haig's not even a top 6 defenseman when everyone's healthy, but they're adding guys to make this playoff run something special, to check all the boxes. Bill Zito has done a really good job for a guy that never had a prominent number 1 GM role. He was the assistant in Columbus for a while, but it's his time. This is his city. He's making an impact. And as we talk about Pat Riley and what he's done with the Heat, let's slow the brakes a little bit. But Bill Zito's done a fantastic job in creating a team that the NHL is scared about. In Canada, I've never heard so many people talk about the Florida Panthers.
Well, only like how they should move up to Canada. Other than that topic, right?
Forget that. They're not. That's not happening.
No, it's amazing. And obviously, slow the roll with the whole Pat Riley comparison, just as, Riley's been doing it since the 80s. But in terms of, the first 2-year trajectory, I mean, it's hard to deny that he's on a path to become one of the best, front office executives, in NHL history based on the first 2 years. Yeah. I mean, you just listed probably 10, 15 moves, and you didn't even mention Carter Verhaeghe, who he got super cheap. You didn't even mention Gus Forsling, who he got off the scrap heap. You know what I mean? Like, Patrick Hornquist, Radko Gudas.
Previous regime, but still made an impact. It's ridiculous what he's done, what this coaching staff has done. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but Andrew Burnett comes in at a very tough time in the franchise. Team 7-0-0. He jumps in after, he jumps in and he gets 50 wins. He could easily win the Jack Adams this year. And I think a lot of the question marks with Brunette, like, can he win on the road post All-Star break? No problem. I can win on the road. Can he come back from Leeds? No problem. Can he make line adjustments? No problem. How's Andrew Burnett been?
I mean, he's been great. I think he'd be the first one to tell you that it's not just him. Like, he leans pretty heavily on his assistant coaches. Like, they've got a really good thing going, the way that they balance each other out with the goaltending, with the lines, with the special teams. But I mean, Bruno's done an excellent job. He stepped into an extremely difficult situation with what happened at the beginning of the season with Joel Quenneville, the resignation over the Kyle Beach scandal, and all that had to happen. I mean, there's no denying that. But you mentioned it. The team was 7-0 at the time. You don't know how it's going to impact the team. A lot of new players. They didn't skip a beat. And not only did they not skip a beat, but then he took them to win a President's Trophy. It's ridiculous what a great job he's done. And I mean, granted, you could say, well, what has he done? What has he changed? The team has stayed the same. Well, that locker room has become one of the strongest locker rooms in the league. Close-knit. Everybody goes to practice every day, giving 150%. And that has as much to do with the coaching staff as it does with the players. So, yeah, Andrew Burnett's done a spectacular job. I would imagine that he's going to get a really good look by Zito and his staff in the offseason to become the permanent head coach. I don't see why they would bring somebody else from the outside in with the success that they have running these systems that Bruno is quite astute on at this point. I'm curious to see if he wins the Jack Adams. Obviously, Sutter up in Calgary might have something to say about that, just as Mr. Lemereau and the Long Island did for Zito last year. Hopefully we don't have another situation like that. But I mean, either way, I think, if you could weigh Jack Adams or perhaps Stanley Cup success, which one are you going to take?
Exactly. And obviously, Jonathan Huberdeau didn't win the Art Ross, but he was so close, tied for second. Him and Johnny Gaudreau, 115, I believe. Connor McDavid, he played the last 2 games of the season. Huberdeau didn't, but I don't know if Huberdeau will win the Hart. In my opinion, I don't think that he will, just because from this chatter I've seen on Twitter, at least from some of the professional writers, I don't know if he's going to get those votes. But nonetheless, a historic season from Huberdeau. Alexander Barkov wasn't able to play the entire season, but if he did, he finished with 39 goals, very possibly could have got almost to 50. He would have hit 40 probably if he played the last 2 games of the season. But it's better safe than sorry when it comes to injuries, as we saw with Nashville and UC Saros. Second to last game, he goes out with an injury. But Jamie, we've been talking a lot about the Panthers. We got to look at Washington. We got to respect Alex Ovechkin, and possibly the greatest goal scorer of the modern generation. Easily has a chance to overtake the great Wayne Gretzky in terms of NHL goals. And when we look at Gretzky's records, you don't think anyone can beat him, but Ovechkin might be the only guy that can get close to those records. We got to respect that. We got to respect Nick Backstrom, who's been one of the most underrated players. You mentioned Orlov. I mentioned Tom Wilson. They got some hitters on that team too. Looking at the series, how do you think the Panthers match up physically, offensively, defensively, and goaltending with the Washington Capitals? Because let's take a quick moment. First time in NHL history, all 8 teams in a conference hit 100 points. It's happened 7 of 8 teams once, but never all 8 teams. So it's a very tough playoff for all 8 teams involved with it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, the year the Panthers win the President's Trophy, it's the deepest Eastern Conference ever, right? Of course, that's how it goes. But yeah, Washington's coming in, and they're no joke. I mean, like you mentioned, they put up over 100 points. They've won a Stanley Cup only a couple seasons ago, and they have arguably the greatest goal scorer of our generation. Greatest goal scorer I've ever seen, that's for sure. The Panthers cannot take them lightly. And like we were talking about earlier in the show, come playoff time, it's not going to be as easy to score as many goals. Things tighten up. It gets more physical. But like I think David mentioned earlier, that's a two-way street, We're going in hungry. They're going in experienced. But I don't think physicality is going to be a problem. We got guys like Radko Gudas. The Panthers have guys like Ryan Lomberg. They have deep physical guys in that lineup. And you asked offensive, defensive. Offensively, I definitely think the Panthers have the edge. Defensively, it could go either way. Like I mentioned, they have Orlov back there. He had a pretty good season. But you look at the Panthers decor, and they made it pretty strong. Montour came on strong towards the end of the season. Forsling had a very strong season. Should be getting Ekblad back sometime in this series. Whether it's game 1 or not is still up in the air. Uyghur's been solid all season. And like I mentioned, they got Radko Gudas, big physical body back there. It's going to be huge come playoff time. I think the Panthers match up very well with the Capitals. I think the Capitals lineup is a little bit top-heavy. You look down their lineup, they don't have nearly as many 20-goal scorers as the Panthers. I think I only saw 2 when I checked earlier today. I think the Panthers have the advantage, but playoffs is a whole different story. I mean, we've been pumping the Panthers' tires all season. Now is the time where it really matters.
I think down the middle, personally, is where the Panthers are going to excel. Obviously, Claude Giroux is playing the wing, but when you need to put him in as a draw, he's probably the best centerman on this team. But top 3 for centers, you got Barkov, you got Bennett, you got Lundell, all healthy. When they're healthy, it's probably one of the best top 9s in the league just down the middle. And, wingers too, defensemen, the Panthers have on paper what is needed to win a playoff series. And Aaron Ekblad coming back, we missed him so much last season. If he can be able to come back anytime during this series, it's going to be huge for the Panthers, because as much as the impacts of Forsling, Uyghur, Montour, I think Radko Gudas' second half of the season really stepped up. I was a little iffy on him, just the pinches and the coming back. I think he's kind of calmed down a little bit, kind of stood back as that stalwart defenseman that you would need for a guy like him. A fully healthy Panthers team in this series, they're the team to beat, basically.
And just to respond to Ryan's comment real quick about Barkov and the 2016 series against the Islanders, bro, that was 6 years ago. Barkov was like 22. He's a head and shoulders different player right now. I would not. Don't worry about what you saw in 2016, Ryan. You'll be okay.
Yeah, Barkov was he's 26 now, so 6 years ago
So
he
he
was
was
20.
20.
He was younger than me and Jamie. So let's look at what he's
it'll
doing
be okay.
now.
If that's the concern, you'll be okay.
I was at that series too. I saw everything. That was a young team. Young Ekblad, young Huberdeau. I mean, Trocheck was on the team. Young Trocheck. There was no Uyghur. This was a young.
Yeah, that was
Panthers
Trocheck was
team.
tripped.
Trocheck was one of the craziest lines in Florida hockey or Florida sports history. But look, we have players in their prime now, players that are scary to play against. We look at the NHLPA polls from a couple days ago. Barkov was voted one of the most complete players in the league by his peers. Jonathan Huberdeau just put up 115 points. They performed last year, like Huberdeau performed last year in the playoffs. He was up there in terms of points, even in the second round when the Panthers were eliminated. I have no problem offensively what this team can do, because even when one line's not scoring, we got 3 lines possible of scoring. You got the leadership in that locker room. I mean, Bruno has talked immensely in the press conferences about Joel Thornton and what he brings to the teams. All the guys love Jumbo. You got Hornquist. You got other veterans. Claude Giroux has been to Stanley Cup finals. Horny has won 2 Stanley Cups. This is Joel Thornton's been to Stanley Cup final. This is not the same Panthers team that we've had in years past. And I think they'll be ready. And offensively, defensively, I think they're ready. We got to hope the goaltending holds up. I think Bob's done a pretty decent job this year. It's his net to lose at this point, in my opinion. But the Panthers are the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. And we've seen it during the regular season.
Absolutely. I mean, look, unless we see a different Panthers team in the playoffs than we've seen for the last 6.5 months, they are absolutely the team to beat. There's no reason to think that you get deeper in the playoffs, things, continue to tighten up. But I'm much more excited and anxious than I am concerned about what's to come in, hopefully the next couple of months. It should be a lot of fun. This team is built to succeed. And before, I just had to jump in here before we wrap up, between Alex's awesome Mighty Ducks 2 hat and Jamie's background making me feel like we're separated at birth, right down to the same Dwayne Wade poster that we both seem to have in our room. Like, I feel like maybe we're separated at birth or something, man. Like we got all the same similarities here. So it's very good vibes right tonight on the show.
And exactly. Go ahead, Jamie.
One more thing before we wrap up. You were talking about earlier the difference between the old regime and the new regime and the moves they made at the deadline. This is such a good group. I mean, you look at guys, we were talking about the hunger of this team, but you do have guys that have veteran presence like a Joe Thornton, like a Claude Giroux. I really think the mix of young guys, veteran guys, hungry guys, guys who have been to the playoffs, guys who haven't been to the playoffs, I really think it's the perfect mix, and the sky's the limit for this hockey team come playoff time.
Yeah, you look at the guy in the locker room who's like the driving force. Alex, sorry to cut you off. I promise I'll zip it after this. The guy in the locker room who's like the driving force behind motivating everybody and keeping them going and driving the bus is Patrick Hornquist, who's got not 1 but 2 Stanley Cup rings. So you talk, as if they needed any other extra motivation. He just has to pull the Pat Riley thing, just drop the rings on the table. What's up, guys?
And exactly, I mean, we're so excited. As you can see on this video, we've been all ears. We've been smiling. We are being optimistic. We're being, legitimate. We're listing strengths for both teams, maybe weaknesses for both teams, but we all kind of see what they've been building. And this is a different team than last year. They went through that heartbreak. They know they could have beaten Tampa. They're ready. This team's ready. You can see it in the lock. You can see it in the games. You can see it in the press conferences. You can see it. This team's ready for the playoffs. And this is going to be like a series you haven't seen before for a very long time, in almost 2 decades. This team is ready to compete for the Stanley Cup, and they put all the pieces on the table. So we're going to wrap this show up now, but this is just the start for our coverage on 5 Reasons Sports and Fifth Line 5R. First of all, huge thank you to David and to Jamie for joining us today. If you guys don't know, what you should know, David got the show Odd Man Rush on 5 Reasons YouTube, which is on this channel right here. That's every week. We're going to keep that going during the playoffs. David has some amazing guests from NHL media professionals to, European professionals. There's everyone on the show, and David does an amazing job, breaking down the Florida Panthers. He's one of the best in the game. Me and Jamie got In the Box going every week. Our guy Manny behind the scenes has been producing all these shows, keeping it going. We just got a new show, The Daily Minute, with our colleague Caitlin Daly, which is a minute recap on everything Florida Panthers from the playoff games. And we're going to start a new segment where we're going to talk a little bit about players that you can look forward to in this upcoming first round and hopefully second, third, and Stanley Cup finals. But make sure you follow David on Twitter over there at David Dwork. Make sure you follow Jamie Goldman over there at Jamie Goldman 66. And make sure you follow us here at the Fifth Line 5R Show and at 5 Reasons Sports. Like I said, we're one of the networks covering everything Florida Panthers hockey for this playoffs. South Florida fans, you've been showing the love the last 2 seasons with us, and we're going to keep bringing you this content. So, guys, thank you so much. It's time to hunt, and we're just 2 days away. We'll see you guys soon here on 5 Reasons Sports Network.